did get sacked. So, or I got sacked. And the funny thing is, ended up being great. So, and then you look back and think, what was I ever worried about? I've made a lot of money over the years, and I've never been hooked on cocaine or, bought a mega yacht. So, money's not an issue for me. I was getting laughs in ICU the next morning, actually. So, doing a lot of radio and TV, and I was going to do a TV interview until the boss of the hospital came down and said, "You're in ICU. You shouldn't be doing this much media." So it's like, even at the age of not even turned 22, I thought I don't want that for any future kids I have. So that was part of it. So yeah, I broke the cycle of alcohol abuse basically, and I haven't regretted it for a second. All I want for my children is for them to realise that life itself is just the gift and everything else is noise.
Dave Hughes, welcome to the Stellar Podcast.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, the first time that you and I have spoken, we've met in real life, but not in the studio. One of the very first episodes of the year, because you are taking to the stage across Australia this month. Your new show, Cooked, is kicking off. As 2026 begins, how are you feeling about saying goodbye to 2025? Because you had a bit of a rough year. You sustained some fairly serious injuries in an AFL charity match in August.
I did, yes. So that was at the end of August. I played in a game at Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, which was, the irony was it was there to improve men's health, and it ended up not improving my health. But so I got 5 broken ribs and a punctured lung out of that game. So which was it was a well watched game too. It was like apparently the most watched AFL game apart from the grand final. So, which is ridiculous because it was like a charity game involving a lot of past AFL legends, but a couple of clowns, including myself. So a lot of people watched the game and saw me get injured, and some people thought I was putting it on. Other people were very concerned for me, but yeah, in the end, I wasn't putting it on. I did have 5 broken ribs and a punctured lung, and I kept playing in the game after I sustained the injury. So it was a big talking point, and I still get asked about it even to this day, which is, like months afterwards. But you know what? It got me attention, and that's what I love. So, so as long as I didn't die, which clearly I haven't, it was a net positive, I'm saying, that result, because it's got me a lot of laughs as well. So I was getting laughs in ICU the next morning, actually, so doing a lot of radio and TV, and I was going to do a TV interview until the boss of the hospital came down and said, "You're in ICU. You shouldn't be doing this much media." So it's like,
that's got to be a first. I mean, I know a lot of people struggle to, maybe put the phone down and disconnect from work and family obligations while they're in ICU. But you could be the first person that was doing stand-up and keeping the country amused from ICU.
Well, it was lie down, really. It was stand-up while lying down. So, and I also, I had a morphine drip in at the time, so I was in better form than Charlie Sheen during his Tiger Blood period. So it was all happening for me. So I did have to cancel Channel 7 though, which was sad because they were on their way in with cameras, which I'd okayed, but apparently it wasn't my position to okay a film crew coming to ICU because I wasn't the boss of the ICU. I was just a client of the ICU.
Physically, it was obviously a pretty harrowing situation. Glad to hear you through the worst of it. You are doing okay physically?
Yeah. So I actually, probably a month after the actual incident, I suppose we'll call it, I did go get a heart check, which was just an cautious doctor wanting to check my heart. And the heart actually was really good, so my heart's in really good shape. But the person doing the scan noticed that I had a lot of fluid on my right lung. So, and they actually asked me, do you know how much fluid you've got in the lung? And I'm like, no, I don't know how much fluid I've got in my lung. I don't have a lung fluid gauge. And I had to get the fluid drained, so I had to go back to the hospital. And I was slightly concerned, and because the surgeon said that if the fluid keeps coming back on your right lung, we might have to have a lung operation, which was concerning. So, but then a few weeks ago, again, I got another check from that surgeon who said that there's no fluid on the lung anymore, and you're going to be okay from now on. So that was probably the final tick of approval for me to get on with my life, even though I was already getting on with my life. I was on stage, I think, 3 days after actually sustaining the injury. I had a charity gig to do, and I didn't want to let them down, so I basically went straight from hospital to on stage. So, continued to work. I haven't really stopped working. I love work, though. That's the thing. I love it. So, what I do is joyful. So initially I couldn't travel, so I did lose a bit of money because I couldn't do some interstate gigs that I'd had booked. But apart from that, yeah, I haven't really missed a beat.
Well, with Cooked, that, as I say, is kicking off from this month, there will be a lot of travel involved. What can you tell us about the show? You were using this experience to for comedic fodder within an hour, a few hours, maybe even moments of it happening. Will this be playing into material for the show? Do you subscribe to the view that, you know, if you don't laugh, you'll cry,
Definitely.
yada, yada, yada?
Yeah, I'm all for that. So yeah, I mean, I was using it for the accident or the incident for comedic fodder while it was happening. In fact, so I was doing interviews. I did an interview at halftime of the game where I already had the punctured lung and broken ribs. I didn't know for sure I had them, but I knew I was injured. But as I'm walking off the ground, I was doing jokes about it and actually saying to the reporter, who was a legend AFL player himself, who famously punctured his own lung in the 1989 grand final, and as I'm walking off at halftime, his name's Robert Dipp, he had a minute ago, I said to him, Dipper, I think I've done what you did in the 89 grand final. I think I've punctured a lung. And we had a laugh, but I actually had. So I'm always forever, everything's content. I write down every day in a journal, the first thing I write in my journal is everything's funny. So, and I definitely, trauma is the funniest, really. So for me, at least, so when things happen to me that, could be stressful or could be, especially when they, affect my ego, and they hurt my feelings, I get the best comedy from that. So it's people are very happy to laugh with you when you're describing things that have gone wrong in your life. So it's much easier to get a laugh out of that than it is to, describe, the fact you made a heap of money on the stock market because you bought in a video when they were $4 a share, which I did. So, anyway.
What about your loved ones, your wife, your children, people that are close to you? Are there moments where there's something really serious, traumatic, and they're saying, Dave, stop with the jokes, let's get serious? Yeah,
that can happen for sure. So not very often. And I think I've got a reasonably good radar. If it affects me, if it's my story, I'm more likely to tell it as a comedic story. So if it's someone else's story, I'm more mindful not to, go there before you make sure everyone's okay with it. So I got in trouble years ago, actually, when my wife's grandmother passed, and I was on radio, and for some reason I can't remember the actual incident or what triggered it, but I think we're talking about on radio, and I might have got the giggles, it was inappropriate, and I knew that. But it's like laughing in church. Sometimes you're not meant to laugh, and so that's when you do laugh because you're not meant to. And that's probably one of the happiest times of your life is when you're laughing when you're not meant to. It just provides such joy for you that you can't contain. So I ended up getting the giggles, not directly related to her passing, but it was just in an appropriate time to laugh. And I was trying to stop laughing, but I think her uncle was listening to the radio at the time and was very offended, and fair enough too. So that took a little bit to get him back on board. But every now and again you do cross the line. But I still think you're better off choosing laughter over crying when you can. It's okay to cry, obviously, but at the end I choose to laugh.
Dave, you mentioned your work ethic there and how hard you like to work. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the rhythm of work at the moment, because you have, throughout the course of your career, had what we would call a bit of a portfolio career. You co-host on various shows, and there's projects that come up, and obviously tours and the speaking circuit. But then there's those fixed long-term jobs that obviously happen in radio. It's been about 18 months now since the Hughesy, Ed and Erin show went off air. That was August 2024. How are you finding the absence of that sort of have to be here every day of the week, 5 days a week, for like 40 weeks of the year? Is that something that you miss, or has it opened up a whole new, I suppose, realm of possibilities for work?
Yeah, look, it has. At the end, it's been liberating, to be honest. So, and the funny thing about that, I've been in radio for like decades, and every 6 weeks you would have surveys, and you sort of live in fear the whole time. Oh no, what if this survey's bad and I get sacked? So, so that went on for like over 20 years, 25 years, and eventually, we did get sacked. So, or I got sacked, but the funny thing is, ended up being great. So, and then you look back and think, what was I ever worried about? So, yeah, I mean, obviously I've made, well, not obviously, but whatever. I've made a lot of money over the years, and I've never been hooked on cocaine or bought a mega yacht. So, money's not an issue for me. But it's all the ego, really, where you think failing or perceived failure as something's going to lower your status in life, which is just ridiculous. And that's probably what I found out after that time, is it was ridiculous. And funnily enough, and realised no one cares or even notices whatever you're doing, and you're the only one thinking about yourself, no matter who you are, basically. So, funnily enough, there was a survey done recently, which I became aware of, where, only probably a month ago, or no, just the end of 2025, it was a survey done, apparently an extensive survey, which voted me the second most popular person on radio, even though I hadn't been on radio for 18 months. So I was getting more popular. So that perception of you're going to be seen as a failure was ridiculous, was always ridiculous, but in other words, but it's gone the other way. I'm seen as more of a success, which is crazy. So yeah, that whole bullshit and ego-related bullshit, which, you get tied into, everyone does to some degree, and I was certainly a big degree tied into that for a long time, is all an illusion, and it's not worth worrying about.
Who was number one?
It was Amanda Keller. So it was Amanda Keller's number one, and me and Carrie Bickmore were equal second. So those two are still on air. So I do a lot of radio, but just guest spots at the moment. So maybe that was for whatever reason. I don't know. But anyway, so it's still pretty funny that you're the second most popular person on radio when you don't even have a shift.
Dave, one of your co-hosts on that show, Erin, was here on the Stella podcast with me in August. And she had a similar sense, in her own way, of course. You're very different people, but she spoke a lot about her friendship with you. And her perspective was quite similar in that she said losing her job was her biggest fear. And then it happening actually really has been an absolute game changer for her in the time since. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about what she said to me at the time. She said about you, we had a great relationship, Hughesy in particular. When I go on dates, he's usually the first person I text or call afterwards. We speak a lot, and he's someone that I'm forever grateful to have met and spent so much time with. Yes, we came to blows a few times and we would disagree, but he's become one of my closest friends. I mean, when you've got someone in your life that they're thinking of texting to debrief after a date, whether it's gone well or not for her, that's really cuts to the heart of genuine friendship and connection. That's not just a professional radio collaboration 18 months on.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear those words. And yeah, Erin she's a person who enjoys life, which is great, and obviously, she's got an ego, I've got an ego, everyone's got an ego, and sometimes we get carried away with it and we worry about what other people think, and I'm talking about how guilty I've been of that, and I know she has been guilty of that as well, but yeah, so, but at the end of the day, I think a friend is someone who you can ring when something has gone wrong in your life and they will laugh with you, so that's a true friend, I think so, and I'd like to think I am that friend for people, and it's great to hear Erin say that.
Another of your really successful on-air partnerships for a long time, of course, was with Kate Langbrook, who's also a good friend of the Stella podcast and been on a few times. Dave, I know you and her always get asked, respectively, are the two of you going to reunite on radio? There's clearly, as your position is still the second most popular on radio, even though you're not on full-time at the moment, there's still clearly a lot of appetite for the two of you to get back on the airwaves. I know you get asked this every time you speak to a journalist, so I can't disappoint by not being painfully predictable. Will we see the two of you back on air anytime soon?
Look, I don't know is the short answer and the truthful answer. So, yeah, I mean, me and Kate live around the corner from each other, and we always have a good laugh when we catch up, which is often. So, look, if the right opportunity came up, definitely a possibility. But so we'll see what happens there. So, yeah, that's all I can really say about that. Again, I always enjoy my time with Kate, and we've collaborated on a number of different projects since the radio finished, and it's always a joy. So yeah, but I don't know about that. So definitely, I did a podcast at the end of the year, her Buck Up podcast, and it was just me and her, because I think her co-host Nath was doing something else that day, and like an hour went past in the blink of an eye.
One of the last time that Kate and I spoke, one of the things that we spoke about, which I wanted to ask you about just for your perspective on your work on television, it was something that I call the glamour gap, which is essentially the difference in time between how long a male television presenter or a man working in broadcast media spends in hair and makeup and wardrobe, as opposed to a female television presenter spends in hair and makeup. A lot of the TV work you've done, The Masked Singer, for instance, you were really the common thread on that show. There were a lot of female fellow judges over the years, Danny Minogue, Mel B, Jackie O. What were your observations, often being the only man on the panel?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was certainly grateful that I didn't have to be in hair and makeup for a couple of hours. So, I mean, I don't know who brought those rules in, that the women turn up to makeup, 3 hours before the men, but I mean, that's not just in TV. I mean, if everyone's got married, you'll know that the women spend a long time getting prepared and the men just don't spend any time getting prepared. I look back at my wedding photos and my wife was absolutely stunning, and, I could have done with a bit more extra attention, to be honest. So, I do a lot of stuff now, which is just face to camera on Instagram and goes through my Facebook, and I think it gets put on my TikTok. So, and it's just with no makeup on, and and people engage with that much more than generally they would if you've got a full face of makeup on. So people like the rawness of seeing people, unvarnished, I suppose. But you still have to deal with half the comments saying that you look sick, basically, or what happened to you, or why do you look so old, or so there's a lot of nasty comments that come men's way as well.
People are not kind in the comments, whoever you are, whether you're a supermodel, whether you're a male or female. So I was going to ask you about that side of things, because it has definitely been a huge transformation in the industry as opposed to, say, 20 years ago, where you probably didn't really have to worry at all about being camera facing, unless you were literally going in to do a TV spot in a classic broadcast TV studio.
All you have to do is just look up from your phone. Whenever I look up from my phone, wherever I, my phone was in a hotel room in Brisbane recently, and my phone wasn't charged, so I left it in the room to charge and went and did something. I think I was waiting for some food at some sort of restaurant, takeaway restaurant, and I was the only one who didn't have a phone, and every other person is just staring at their phone. And it doesn't matter what age they are. They're all staring at their phones, from 5 years old through to 95 years old. So everyone is consuming content that way now. And also when it's on social media, that gives everyone a chance to have an opinion of the content they just saw if they want to. So, so I get a lot of comments every day when I post, and I post stuff most days, and some of it's negative. And I used to be really hurt by such, for nasty comments. And they used to come, once a week via letters to the editor page of the Age or the Sydney Morning Herald or whatever the local, or the Herald Sun or the Daily Telegraph. So just someone had to write a letter, send it in. I still remember Eric from Echuca saying I should get off TV 30 years ago, and that hurt me. So, but now you get those comments every day, and actually, to be honest, it's the bathe. It's almost like cold water therapy. You hate the cold, but if you sit in an ice bath for 5 minutes and it hurts like hell, eventually you get used to it, and you realise you didn't have to worry about the cold. And that's sort of what's happened to me with social media and the comments, that you get so many, you realise none of them matter at all. So, and it's actually helped my children as well, I reckon, because they see, they're online, or they were before the ban happened. Well, my son's 16, so he can stay online. But they saw, the nasty comments that were written about me, and they realised that it didn't affect me. So, and I think that made them realise that other people's opinions don't have to affect you. So it's actually, I think it's been a net positive, because once you realise that, you're in charge of your own emotions and no one else is, it's always me in charge of my emotions. And I didn't realise that when I was a younger person. I thought that other people's comments, did affect me, and there's nothing I could do to stop them affecting me. But once I realised, and it's only happened recently, by the way, probably in my 50s, where I realised hang on, I don't have to take anyone else's opinion on board at all, because it doesn't matter. And once I realised that, life became so much more relaxing, and hopefully that way of living is bleeding into my children's lives, and they don't have to go through the bullshit that I went through, which was basically being a narcissist from the age of 5 and, you know, holding on to nasty comments about me, you know, for decades. So I've given all that up. Hopefully they don't have to hold on to the bullshit, which is other people's opinions.
And what a great lesson to pass on. And it's what we all hope as parents, isn't it? That the fire that we have walked through is hopefully going to be something that our children will be protected from.
But it's they have to protect themselves. You realise it's all personal responsibility, and once you realise that you make all the decisions about your life, I make all the decisions about my mood, and the outside world is really doesn't matter really, because it's the internal world is where I live, and so whether I'm successful, so to speak, in society's eyes or not, doesn't matter. Billionaires are depressed. So people who are wildly successful in their lives become depressed. So, and even though it would look like they've had all the luck in the world, but they're not processing it right. So it's all about how you process life. It's got nothing to do with what happens externally. Internally is everything, and that's what I think that's what we have just completely forgotten about as a society, where we're always looking to blame external factors for our mood rather than taking personal responsibility.
100%. Every day we're giving control to a total stranger on the internet or a colleague. Say, you're dictating how I feel today because I want your approval. The moment that you have that realisation and that click-through moment, everything changes. It's
not even realising that they're dictating it. You're always dictating how you feel. Yep. You're always doing it.
Yeah.
So I create every emotion. I always have. All I have to do is realise that they're not controlling me, I am. So it's me who wants to dwell in self-pity. It's not them, it's just all me. So, and once I realise that I always had all the control, and I always create my whole life. No one else has ever created my life, I've always done it myself. Then you realise, well, hang on, so it's up to me, it's not up to anyone else.
It's so resonant with me, and I'm sure with so many people listening. I say a lot to my sons, there'll be a complaint about this teacher, they're this. I'll say the thing is, there's always going to be that, whether that's even true or not, because that's also your perception.
Yeah.
Maybe the teacher isn't really wrong, maybe you're wrong. But as you say, the only thing any of us control is how we react, what we do, the decisions that we make. But I do think that it is something, as you say, for a parent, we all have to learn for ourselves. But for your children to have grown up, as you said, Dave, seeing awful things being said, and they know that's not the person that you are. But more importantly, with what you're saying, is that you're not allowing that to affect yourself.
Yeah.
I think them seeing that will put them in a good position.
Yeah. All I want for my children is for them to realise that life itself is just the gift, and everything else is noise. So just at any moment you look around and think, oh my God, it's amazing to be alive. And that's the only success in life, is that realisation, and that involves no money or no awards it just involves a realisation that being alive is an awesome gift each moment. So, and it's a temporary gift as well. So just enjoy each moment. So all your worries they don't mean anything. You just all you're doing, if you're not focusing on the joy of now, is wasting time, basically.
Dave, as you and I are speaking, it's the social media ban that you referred to. Your eldest at 16, like my eldest at 16, they're exempt, but your younger children. Now, look, it's very early days, so none of us, of course, exactly sure how it will play out. But what are your initial observations, and what did you think about the idea? Because obviously it's got everyone in the world talking. Yeah.
Look, I'm glad when I'm not on my phone, I'm a happier person when I don't spend hours just scrolling, which is, what obviously the algorithms are designed to make us do. They know what we want and they give it to us, and so that we stare at our phone most of the day. So whenever I don't do that, I probably feel better. So I'm happy for my under 16-year-old kids to not be doing that. So yeah, I'm glad for them not to be on the phone as much. But I just for me, it's just like, we can't protect our children from nasty things being said about them. It's going to happen. So whether it's via social media or whatever, there's going to be nasty things said about them because it's got nothing to do with them. It's other people's issues. So kids have to be able to deal with nasty things being said about them. And again, I tried to avoid it as much as possible in my life, and I was always hung up on what other people said about me. And, I can remember insults that were given to me when I was like 7 years old. I still remember them. So, but I wish I had, in my time, as then realised that I didn't have to get affected by it. So that's, again, this is the personal responsibility that I want my kids to be aware of. So, and every kid to be aware of, that you don't have to be triggered by ridiculous comments other people say or things like that. You do have the control to not be. So I think we need to invest more in that, into personal responsibility side of things, to let every child know that they have the power, they use the power, and it's their decision how they're going to use the power of their own mind. So that's what I think we should focus on more than banning things from kids, because you can't protect them forever.
One of the people that you mentioned earlier that wrote the old school letter to the paper, Eric, I believe, saying shouldn't be on TV 30 years ago. All due respect to Eric, bad call. Dave, I asked you the predictable question about whether a full-time return to radio is on the cards. Is there anything happening in the TV landscape that takes your eye?
Well, I did 8 episodes of Talking About Your Generation as a team captain for Channel 10, which sort of aired towards the end of 2025. So I think that's in discussions to whether that gets another series or not, to be honest. So, which rated pretty good, but yeah, I mean, TV's expensive as well, so it's not as easy for them to, greenlight series, basically. So, look, what's in the... there's a couple of things that might happen, but yeah, it's not an urgency for me, to be honest. I think, yeah, we're watching the transition of how entertainment's going. So, and you can see that, you see that, through the bloody financial statements of free-to-air TV stations, that it's bloody hard for them to turn a profit these days. So, and that's not just TV, that's radio and that's print as well. So because of the way the way that people consume entertainment has changed so much so quickly, we know all the money has just gone basically funneled into Silicon Valley in America. So, and even some of the ratings, it appears that are pretty good in free-to-air TV or whatever. It's hard for the stations to convert that into money because the advertisers aren't there as much. So it's tricky. So, but you know what? You can't beat them, join them. I remember years ago, I looked around at all the money going to Silicon Valley through technology, and I just invested in all those companies. I thought, mate, you can't beat this. So I invested in Apple and Google and Amazon and all those companies because I knew the money was going there, which was in hindsight, I'm bragging right now, but it was a good decision. So, I'm happy to have that. Honestly, happy to have a direct access to audience through those social media channels, which is leading to people in the street talking to me about something I've just posted on Instagram than a TV show I just to get dedicated months to, if you know what I mean. So, in a way, it's a hell of a lot easier just to see something in the street, film it, talk about it, bang, it's up there like that. You don't have to worry about TV executives green-lighting something anymore. So, and that's the way life's changed. So, the direct audience, and it's there's not as many hoops to jump through to get your message out there or your joke out there, basically. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in the free-to-air TV space or the TV space in general, I suppose. But I know that I still have a way to contact people and be, to be seen, which is great. And look, stand-up comedy's always been my number one joy. It's where I started in comedy, and I will do stand-up comedy till the day I die. I'm happy to, if at some point there's a headline, Dave Hughes, dies on stage, like literally dies on stage. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me, apart from my family, who I will miss. But I really will have died in my happy place. So yeah, so as long as I can still do stand-up comedy, I'll be happy.
Is there any particular trepidation or fear that follows you when you do stand-up comedy?
My first ever gig that went well, really well, was when I walked on stage. It was only my third ever stand-up comedy gig when I was only 22. And as I walked on stage, I just had an epiphany, I believe, where I just thought, I'm a winner just for doing this. It doesn't matter what the reaction is. And that thought, which just occurred to me, meant that I just relaxed and, you know, for as far as I can tell, was still the best ever gig I've done, which is my third ever gig. It was just, I felt a sense of lightness, and the crowd did go with it, and I floated out of the tiny venue I was in thinking I know what to do with my life. I was right. Actually, I was thinking I was right. This is what I should be doing with my life. So that would occur to me sometimes, and other times it wouldn't occur to me. Other times I would put too much pressure on the gig I was doing, or, you know. Generally, when I get on stage, I've been able to put those fears aside and focus. And so sometimes I wouldn't be able to do that, and I'd be on stage in front of a lot of people and they'd be laughing, but internally I'd be like crying because I'd think I'm a fraud, or, you know, it didn't go well as well as it went last time, or this joke is too old, I shouldn't be doing this joke, I should have a new joke. So all those thoughts would occur over my career. But lately, I must admit, well, I'm happy to admit that I really have to a large extent put all that aside. And again, that epiphany I had after getting sacked from the radio show bled over into my whole career. And now, maybe also because I'm doing so much more stand-up comedy now than I was when I was having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, that I'm so comfortable on stage now. I don't have that anxiety before going on stage, and I don't get fussed if something in the theatre or the pub or the tent or wherever I am, something's not right. I just go with it much more than I used to, you know. So, and which is a great way for me to live, and I think the audience enjoy it because they can see I'm relaxed.
Because you're doing so much stand-up, I'd love to just get your perspective on how audiences and theatres of people, big venues filled with people, have you noticed any way that people are behaving better or worse than, say, they were 5 or 10 years ago?
I remember a time where you'd look out of the crowd and see a lot of screens. You'd think, fuck, you know, you'd feel like half the crowd's looking at their phone while you're performing sometimes. I haven't had that recently. I haven't seen that recently. Maybe I'm not looking for it. So, so I think my crowd's been pretty good, actually, in behaviour. Sometimes people are too drunk and there's nothing you can do about it. So I had an incident in Adelaide last year where I was doing a late night gig. I had a venue in the Adelaide Fringe, but I had a Friday night, late night out, a suburban gig where I had some women in the second row who just wouldn't shut up. And it was like they would just kept talking after I'd do a punchline, get a laugh, and then I'd hear them talking. I'm like, eventually I said to them, "What do you guys? We can hear you. It's distracting." And one of them said that a friend had too much to drink and that she was trying to explain the punchlines to her friend. I'm like, this is not the place to do that. So if she's not getting it, just let her go to sleep, because you're distracting everyone. And they wouldn't shut up, and I ended up getting them kicked out after giving them multiple warnings. And someone filmed it, ended up on. They gave it to the Advertiser in Adelaide. They gave it to Channel 7 in Adelaide, and then they rang me, and it ended up being explaining it that, yeah, whatever, I kicked them out for a good reason, and that ended up being going viral. You know, Vision can go viral when it's raw like that, with me just telling them to get out. And but that ended up with 99% of people agreeing with me that people should shut up during shows, basically. So because it's just selfish. Some people are so stupid that they're unaware that they think that they can just talk while someone's performing, and other people are paid to hear that person and not them. So that is something, but that's a rare occasion these days, actually. It happens, but I don't think it happens any more than it used to. So I think people are probably getting less drunk. I think there's less drinking going on, basically because people can't afford it, I think. So you are getting crowds that aren't as unruly in general, which is a good thing, even though it's a bad thing that people can't afford to drink because they're broke and alcohol's so expensive.
100%. And as you say, silver lining there to economic downturn is at least that, consumption of alcohol might be on the way down, which is actually a nice segue to my last couple of questions to you, Dave, which is it's January. It's a time of year where a lot of people are reflecting on changes they might like to make in their life this year. They might have already made and broken New Year's resolutions by the time this episode comes out. Reevaluating relationship with alcohol is one of them. Long-time listeners of this podcast would know I'm someone that decided to play around with taking a break from alcohol 5 years ago. Haven't had a drink since. So I'm what they call sober curious. Dave, you famously have not drunk yourself for many, many, many years. Any thoughts on that to anyone that might be considering their, as I say, reevaluating their relationship with alcohol as a part of their New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, so I haven't had a drink of alcohol since 1992, so it's a long time now. So I was, I hadn't turned 22. I hadn't started stand-up comedy when I stopped drinking. So I was, I used to a binge drinker as a teenager from probably the age of 14, and I'd always get out of pretty much always get out of control as soon as I started drinking. And, they ended up, every time I drank, I would black out, basically. So I remember reading something, if you lose memory in a night of drinking, you've lost some brain cells. And I was thinking, that's every time I drink. So I thought everyone did that. So, and it was just, I grew up in a family where alcohol was not a positive thing. So, it is stressful for kids. When your parents are, one of your parents is relying on alcohol, and that leads to mood changes. We know that. And as for kids, it's really stressful. And it led to it. It was part of the stress of my childhood. So, and, even at the age of not even turned 22, I thought I don't want that for any future kids I have. So that was part of it. I broke the cycle of of alcohol abuse, basically. And I haven't regretted it for a second. I got my mood back. I realised, again, that's back to the power of personal choice. And, you don't want to give that power away and have something else control your mood. And alcohol, I think, controlled my moods. And also when you can't stop drinking, that's an issue. So, and the only way to get that power back is to not drink. So, I initially was just going to stop for 6 weeks up until Christmas Eve. But then I got to Christmas Eve and thought, I actually feel good. I know if I start drinking again, I'll just be the same as I was. So that was at Christmas Eve 1992. I decided not to drink anymore. And that was, that's 33 years ago now. So, and it was a good decision. So anyone can make that decision. I know, I'm not here to force people to make a decision. We're all going to be dead one day anyway. So, just relax. Whatever you're doing in life now, just relax. Whether you're, lying in the gutter looking up to the sky and you don't know where your pants are, still relax. It doesn't matter. But if you want to stop drinking, you can do that.
I love it. You and your wife Holly, you've been, I believe, Dave, marking your 20th wedding anniversary this year. Married in 2006. So there you go. Early heads up from me, just so you've got it in your diary for this year. Yeah. With the travelling and all the stand-up and travelling all around Australia for Cooked, if you were a woman, people would probably say to you, how do you manage things? How do you manage this big career and marriage and children? For you, that clearly your relationships with your wife, with your children are clearly at the centre of your life. How do you navigate that, and how do you keep that balance as harmonious as possible?
It's been tricky. Look, I've worked a lot, obviously, for a long time. We've had 3 kids in that time. We were 16, 14, about to turn 13. When we first started having children, I was doing nightly TV on The Project. I was doing breakfast radio on Nova in Melbourne, and I was still doing stand-up comedy. I was doing an AFL-based TV show on Saturdays as well. So, and that was through the birth of 3 children. It was crazy, no doubt about that. My wife is an angel, no doubt, and she also is very maternal, and she always was before kids. She was someone who'd it's not someone who wants to spend their time at nightclubs, never did want to spend her time at nightclubs, which is good for me being a non-drinker. And yeah, so she's got a really strong relationship with the kids. So do I, but hers has been more hands-on. There's no doubt. She's also a full-time school teacher, so she's flat out doing that as well. She teaches grade 6. So she's definitely a champion, and I acknowledge that. Probably not often enough, but I'm here to acknowledge that today and every day, hopefully. So that's worked out. She's great with the kids. Technology's great. I'm someone who's on the phone a lot when I'm away, so I'm ringing her, I'm FaceTiming her and the kids whenever I can. So I'm right there all day, probably too much annoying her while I'm ringing up. So technology's really helped with that, keeping connected. So, but it's something to be mindful of, absolutely. And and my desire to climb the entertainment ladder or just be seen all the time in entertainment probably been slightly detrimental to the family, but not too bad, I think. So got a great relationship with the kids, and on my birthday, which is the end of November, it's the cards that they give me, which I love, and I posted on Instagram this year of what they say about me, the 3 kids, which is they said lovely words, and they're pretty honest, so they wouldn't bullshit me. I know that. So so I'm very happy with the relationship I've got with the kids, and happy with the relationship I've got with my wife, and she's definitely the general and the architect of the happy family life, and I'll acknowledge that. But yeah, I think we've done well, and hopefully we continue that.
Dave Hughes, been so wonderful to talk to you, and you can catch Dave on his national tour Cooked, kicking off this month. You'll find details at davehughes.com.au, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. Happy 2026 to you, Dave Hughes.
Yeah, let's just have a worry-free year, guys. We don't know why we're on the planet. We're spinning through eternity without any clue as to what's going on. So just look up at the sky and laugh.